Hi, this is Emily at Rusty Fox Farm, and today we're going to do a video tutorial on how to decoupage a paper mache box using scrapbook papers. You can do these in any different size, whatever shape you want, and you can do them for all of the seasons and the holidays, and you can even embellish them a little more if you would like to do that. You can use the regular natural paper mache color, or you can paint them. You can see these winter ones are painted navy blue, and these ones for St. Patrick's Day are painted green, but most of the rest of them are left natural and distressed. You can see they're just the natural paper color. So let's get started. You will need your paper. You don't need a cutter, but it is very helpful. You will need your paper mache box. You'll either need paint and a paintbrush or distress ink and a dauber. You'll need sandpaper, an Emery board, or a sanding board thing. I don't really know what those are called, but a sanding block. Your scissors, a ruler, and Mod Podge. A note on the Mod Podge, at the farm we really like to use the matte. You can use the gloss, but it does not cure well. So you will have issues with your box sticking together. So we do suggest using the matte. Dishwasher safe and the hard are also okay, but they're not as easy to find. So this is going to be your best bet here. And you'll also need a paintbrush for your Mod Podge, and we typically use the disposable ones because the Mod Podge gets kind of dry around the edges and you don't want to ruin a good paintbrush that way. And then also helpful but not necessary are baby wipes, and they're just good to clean off your fingers a little if you need to do that. So as far as paper, you can use any size paper as long as the top of your box is covered by the paper. Typically the 6x6 pads with all of the coordinating papers are big enough for most boxes, but sometimes you will want the 12x12 paper. This set is really nice because everything coordinates, so you can pick out whatever papers you want, and they're all going to match without you having to make sure they match yourself. I've already went ahead and pulled out 3 pages from this. The way I typically do these boxes is I will pick one thing for the top of the box, and this one I'm actually going to fussy cut a little bit to make sure I get those roses in there. I will do a second paper on the sides of the box, the side of the lid. So I might use that one, or I might actually use this distressed looking teal color. So I would use the same paper on all 4 sides. And then for the box, I would do the same and use the same paper for all 4 sides of the box. You definitely don't have to do that. You could make this as scrappy as you wanted, or you could actually cover the entire box with the same paper if you wanted. It is completely your choice. So what we're going to do is measure the top of this box, and this is where your cutter is helpful, but you could do this with a pencil and your scissors if you wanted to. So you measure the top of the box, and this box measures 2.5, and we actually want to subtract 1/8 from that. So we're going to cut 2 3/8. So since I wanted to fussy cut this paper, I know that the 2 3/8 needs to measure this way because I want it to sit on the box like this. So I will put this into my cutter and go to 2 3/8 and cut it. And then measuring again on the top here, I see that it's 3 1/4, so I'm actually going to want to do 3 1/8. And this is the part I want, so I'm actually going to turn it upside down and go to 3 1/8 and cut. And that will fit nicely on top of my box right there with a slight margin around all sides. And I'll do the same thing for the sides of the lid. So it measures about 1/2 inch, so I'm going to do 3/8 of an inch strips. For the most part, you're going to want 1 strip for each side, but one of these strips will cover 2 of my short sides, so I'm only going to have to cut 3 strips here. So I'm going to cut 2 more. And if these aren't perfect, it does not matter. This is a very forgiving project. So I have the strips I need for the sides. And then we're going to do the sides of the actual box, which measure right at 2.5. So or 1.5. I moved up an inch. So we're going to actually do 1 3/8 inch strips here. And I want this music pattern, so the first thing I'm going to do is cut off that top strip there. And then I'm going to cut 1 3/8 inch strips. And again, one strip will do 2 sides, so I only need to cut 3 strips. And we got a little bit of that butterfly there, so we'll want to make sure and put that somewhere where it'll be seen. Or if you didn't want that, just make sure you cut this side and then you won't need to use that butterfly. So just that quick, we have all of our strips cut, so we can put all of our paper and our cutter off to the side. So we have our 3 strips for the side of the lid. We have the top of our lid and the sides of the box. So what we're going to do is I just poured some Mod Podge into this little container here. And I'm going to take my top piece of paper and I'm going to liberally coat the back of it with the Mod Podge. And this does get a little messy, which is where the baby wipes can come in handy to just wipe your fingers off. But if you get Mod Podge in extra places on your box, it's not a big deal because we are going to sand and distress it. And eventually we're going to cover the entire thing with Mod Podge. So I put my paper down there and I'm just going to rub really well all over the box to make sure the edges are down. And that's what the top will look like. For the sides, instead of measuring, what we're going to do is we're going to line this up about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Then we're going to fold it over about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And then just take your scissors and slice that little fold off. And then you can see when you place it right here, it is the correct size. It's a little bit easier than measuring. So we're going to put that down right there. And we'll do the same for this side. So fold, cut the fold off. And then always dry fit everything when you're doing these because it's easier to cut a new one before you have Mod Podge all over everything. And then just coat the paper. And press it down. And then for this edge, we're going to do the same thing. And then I'm going to actually cut this edge off as well. Since these are the same size, I know I can cut these two the same, and then I'm going to cut my fold off. And then you can see here that they should fit on both sides. So again, I'm going to Mod Podge these. And attach them. If you get any Mod Podge coming out around the edges, just wipe it off with your fingers. As I said, we're going to sand this, so it's not a big deal. This edge here looks like it's coming up a little, so I'm just going to peel it up, put some Mod Podge down there, and press it back down. If you don't catch that before it dries, we can also fix that in the next step. So again, very forgiving project. And it's just paper, so it's nothing to stress over. Our lid is done, so now we're going to move on to the box. And again, just do the same thing. Line it up, fold it, cut the fold off. Dry fit to make sure it's not too big or too small, and coat it with the Mod Podge. And then if you have a directional paper like this one, you will want to make sure that you have all of your pieces going the same direction. And if there's a little too much Mod Podge for your liking, you can just wipe that off with the baby wipe as well. And we said we wanted to make sure that we got that butterfly on there, so we'll line that and fold. You can cover the bottoms of these if you wish to, or if they have a label that won't come off. I typically do not, because it's not anything you're ever going to see. But if you want to, feel free to do that. For the short side here, I'm again going to fold it. Cut that end off. Cut the fold off. Dry fit it, and then glue it down. And just that quick, we have a box that is covered on all sides. At this point, if you wanted to, you could put Mod Podge all around this and be done with it, but I really think that sanding and then distressing the edges really gives it a more rich look. So that is what we're going to do, but we're going to give it about 10 minutes to dry, and then we'll be back. So now that your box is dried, it's time to sand it. Like I said, I like using an Emery board for this. And when you sand, you want to go in just one direction, otherwise you're going to tear up your paper. So your goal here is just to smooth out the edges of the paper so that they're flush with the edge of the paper mache box. And these white edges are okay because we're going to distress it. You want to do this to each side. You don't have to do this a lot. You just want to make sure all of the edges are sanded down a little. So now the bottom of our box is done. You move on to the lid. So once you have it all sanded, make sure you clear off your dust so you don't get it into your Mod Podge. But the next step is that you want to distress this now. And you can do this as little or as much as you want to. So just make sure you go over all of the edges. And this color is Tim Holtz Distress Ink in the Gathered Twigs color. If at this point that you saw that you had a little piece flipped up, just go ahead and distress over it. And then when you put on your final coat of Mod Podge, you'll just want to make sure that you get some under that little piece that's flipped up. So I never do anything with the insides. You can if you want to, but it's completely unnecessary. So now that we have this, there's really no reason to give this time to dry because it's not going to be affected by the Mod Podge. So what you want to do now is just take your Mod Podge and coat everything. If you get any of this on your mat or your working surface, you will want to clean that up. And I don't Mod Podge the inside, but I do like to just touch on the edges. And then once you have your first coat on, just take a glass and sit that there so it can dry. And do the same thing to your box, but on this one I do like to get the bottom of the box. Just make sure you coat everything. And then you want to leave that to dry. And then when you turn it upside down, if you see any of these, just brush those out. And typically, by the time you finish one piece, especially on the bigger boxes, these are dry enough to pick up and you can give it a second coat. And the bottom of that still seems a little wet, so I'm just going to do the sides first. And a second coat on that bottom wouldn't be necessary. That was just to give it a slight shine. And then you'll just want to let that sit until it's completely dry and your box is done. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please give us a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe. You can visit us on the web at rustyfoxfarm.com. You'll find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest as Rusty Fox Farm.